On the phone right now, John Paul Mendocha. Again, turnaround specialist, serial entrepreneur, and author of Remote Work for a Better World. Mr. Mendocha, welcome to Talk of the Town.
Hey, I'm glad to be here.
Now,
exciting times.
Yes, what was the Chinese curse? May you live in interesting times. It doesn't get much more interesting than this. The aspect of, or the concept of working remotely is not new. It's something that I was talking earlier in the show that as far back as 1990, when I got a job at a pretty large company, my first day on the job, I was actually working from home because they didn't have anything for me to do yet in the office. So it's not new, but it certainly seems to have taken hold due to this pandemic. And many companies may have been in the position where they were going to start doing that, but maybe were dragging their feet on it. This seems to have forced them into this position a little bit sooner than maybe they wanted to, huh?
Oh, absolutely. I've actually been doing it since 1988. I've been working out of my house. I was working for a tech company and realized that, a little tiny cubicle which had no windows was crazy, and had a better space where I was at. And now, but today, you're absolutely right. The reality has hit that they have to do it, and they discovered a few things that they were afraid would happen, didn't happen. Example would be that productivity would be way, way, way down. That proved out to be a canard, was not actually factual. The other thing is that could we adapt to this model and do meaningful things? And the answer to both of those is affirmative. We're in good shape.
Now,
from that standpoint,
there are some downsides to this that some people have pointed out, such as, while you're attending meetings and using emails and still in communication, still working, sometimes people are working even more hours because they're at home than they are when they actually have to commute to the office and home. But there's this personal aspect that some people are afraid is being missed, that water cooler conversation. Do you think that that's going to be something that will change over time?
Well, it's always been on. It's been on a long change anyway, because at one point in time, the only way we communicated is we would travel great distances if we were going to do business, and we would go meet with people, and we would do it that way. And technology has been eroding that. Now, I like being across the table from somebody, especially if I'm doing a business deal. The reality is that today we can't do that, so we have to find other ways to do it. I don't think it's going to be lost. It's going to change. And also, I think it's going to affect how we do business going forward. Also, the technology is still in its infancy. I mean, and when I say that, lots of people are going, what are you talking about? But we are, people have no clue of how to, just the etiquette of how to do a Zoom meeting, things that you wouldn't do if you were in an office. But, here they are at home, and they don't think, how do I create a workspace, which is one of the things we talk about in the book, create a workspace that you can actually do professional things in a professional way.
Yeah, maybe not turn on a cat filter when you're in court.
Classic.
Yeah.
Yes, like that.
Things like that. Now, businesses are also learning that this could save them tons of money as well. I mean, the real estate market in New York City is virtually drying up because so many of these companies are finding out that they don't really have to have that expensive, pricey address anymore.
I think there's going to be a great shift that's going to take place in that regard. However, as the more things change, the more they're going to stay the same in a way. I mean, I don't believe that we're going to end up needing to house 20,000 people into one building, and they'll discover that they can use a smaller footprint. I've been advocating that for a long time in helping clients develop a virtual company. It used to be at one point in time, a virtual company meant that, you had a brother-in-law in another state who worked for you. Now it's actually something we figure out how to do it properly. So I think that commercial real estate is going to have an adjustment period and could actually go through some pretty tough times. But we're going to end up using that space. We're humans. We fill everything that we ever do. I mean, let me just ask you this quick question. Do you have a closet in your house that's empty?
No, I'm married.
Yeah. We don't know for how long, but you are now. Okay.
She doesn't listen. So, well, I've noted quite often during this pandemic that hopefully people are taking copious notes on what's working and what's not working. And one of the things that I think has been interesting is people, when they apply for jobs now, they're being told that they can work remotely. I mean, usually that was like the last thing you ever asked. Well, can I work from home? They didn't want to hire you if that was your major concern. But that is seriously how people are getting jobs now. My wife has been in a position where she's had to hire a few people, and she actually prefers to go in and meet them at the office, at least for the first couple of days, before sending them home to work remotely. Do you think that's going to still happen?
Yeah, I think that there are some people who are going to be traditionalists, but those people who understand the power of going virtual will in fact adapt. I agree that what your wife is doing is very smart and clever, and yes, I'm pandering to her right now, but I always have before I hire, and I've done turnarounds, which means I've hired and therefore fired lots of people in the sales and marketing arena, and I always call it the 3-meal rule. If you're going to hire somebody that's really important to you, go through 3 meals, because only the best sociopath will make it through 3 meals without revealing their true self. So I've always believed in that, no matter where they're going to be. But I also believe that we're going to need to have flexibility, and once again, you have to be prepared when you have your workspace somewhere other than an office. You really do have to think in terms of, how do I make this my workspace, and get your mind prepared for that.
And how does a business function in making sure that their people are actually efficient and effective while they're working remotely? And what tips do you have for them to make sure that that's happening?
Well, one of the things is to have a scheduled meeting. If you're going to meet with Bob or Sally, every day, and they're going to wander by your office, and you're going to say, "Hey, what's going on?" Is plan to have a 15-minute meeting on Zoom, and see if they can get organized and be there. I recommend that every person, before you get on a Zoom call, have and I'm a traditionalist, so I'm going to say some things that could shock your listeners, but take a sheet of paper, this thing called a pen, write down a few bullet points. I don't ever go to a real meeting without putting an agenda together ahead of time, but make sure that you capture that. If you want to do it electronically, but make sure that you're prepared, and that's going to be that aspect. As far as businesses knowing that somebody's working, is that you want to listen for what I call top of the mind. Whatever they talk about is that's at the top of their mind is telling you what they're actually doing. And if you notice that there are certain topics that people run the clock on you to try to get to the end of the meeting, they do it one-on-one, but it's harder to do it one-on-one. So just find out what they're talking about, top of the mind. I was able to manage for a client in doing my signature turnaround, a $7.8 million piece of his business, 19 sales reps, a half dozen technical people, 3 support people, and I did it on somewhere between 7 and 15 3x5 cards. Now, that's a lot of business. And by the way, that business returned almost $5 million in profit. The point of it is that I was very organized, and I spent time being organized. Because you're at home, it's easy to get kind of sloppy, but you have to, kind of take yourself out there and say, I got to be organized, got to be ready.
Yeah, I think that's probably one of the biggest challenges that anybody who's had to manage people that have gone remote when they were formerly working together in the same place, in the same location, has had to learn is, how do I manage them without, having them on the phone with me all the time? They still have to be able to do their jobs, but I still have to know that they're doing their jobs. And so that is certainly a skill that many people have had to learn over the last year.
Right, and you can't just rely upon technology. Having some kind of, group management system is helpful. I have that in actually 2 of the businesses that I'm involved in. I'm in several businesses, and it works when it is set up properly. It doesn't work like the the commercial that's on YouTube, certainly, but it works if you actually go through and work on it. I think that oftentimes we take for granted, when we had everybody in the room, in the bullpen, whatever you want to call it, that it was easier to keep people on task and keep them focused, because it was kind of this communal pressure. Well, once that's not there, once you're left to your own devices, before you know it, it all dissipates away. I had a young guy who was working for us in a business, and I called him up and said, okay, why aren't these things getting done? And he said, my girlfriend needed to go to the chiropractor. And I said, wow, let me go look at my to-do list with you. I don't see that. And I said, and you didn't communicate. Now, understand that I'm, I started out as the youngest guy in the room, and now I'm often the oldest guy in the room. But I live on technology, and I said, and you had no way to communicate that to me other than through, psychic vibes or something. He got fired because, again, he couldn't manage his time, and he couldn't manage the intrusion and the interrupts and all of those things.
And final thing, too, is I think it's also important that family members understand that working remotely doesn't mean that you're home and able to do the dishes and vacuum and, since you're home, could you start dinners? And, you're working, but you still have work to do. That was one of the things when I was working remotely that I kind of had to gently explain to my wife before all of this, when she was going into the office. I'm working. I don't have time to take the dog to the vet, to vacuum the living room. I'll do it after work, but I can't get it done during the day. I'm working.
Yes, and that is the big thing, is you have to explain to people that this is actual work. I'm actually having a real job. Some people aren't suited for remote work, and I usually can see that in the first couple of days that I work with people, and it's can they adjust to it? But once you understand what you should be doing versus not doing, it ends up being a fairly easy transition. Most importantly, it gets back to developing the skill set that you need to do as if you were in an office, but you're not in an office, you're by yourself. And by the way, if you need to have somebody you can talk to, you need to have, some kind of service animal or something or whatever it is. But understand, there's a lot of people who feel right now kind of lonely because they're used to that interaction. So now you have to find a way to kind of substitute or fill that in. And most importantly is to understand that every single day that we're involved in this, pandemic globally, whatever, however you believe it. I mean, when you think about, we just crossed a 500,000 people threshold. I've had friends of mine who passed. Is that what you want to always focus on? Is that there's a reason why I need to make this work, because this is the only day I have, and this is the life that I have to live.
Mr. Mendocha, tell us a little bit about your book, Remote Work for a Better World.
So you can get Remote Work for a Better World on Amazon. You can also go to my website, which is positiontowinbook.com. That was the first book, which I launched in the middle of a pandemic, which I wouldn't recommend. But you can go to positiontowinbook.com and go check it out. We have lots of resources. Remote Work for a Better World was written, frankly, in 17 days. I put together a bunch of experts, and we worked really hard to get it out in there. If some of your listeners are want to figure out how to get this thing smarter and better and get there, it's only 99 cents on Amazon. Go pick it up. I believe all you need is like 1/3 of 1/4 of one idea, and it'll probably make you more productive.
Wow, that's awesome. Well, I really do appreciate your time here this morning, sir, and I want to thank you very much for the conversation. This is John Paul Mendocha, and the book again is Remote Work for a Better World, and the website is positiontowinbook.com. Sir, thanks again for your time.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Take care.